Hello, welcome to the Jack and Joe show. Joe Sansom alongside me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Very good after 3 points as always. And how are you?
Yeah, no, I'm pleased. I'm pleased we got the win. Um, it was a frustrating game. We'll get into it. But it was good to get three on the board, seven now in total, and things are looking rosier than they did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I mean, I think the 3 points are the most important thing. But before we dissect the Luton game in full, just a word on our sponsor. And we're very pleased to say that the entire of the 23-24 season, Fulhamish is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. Green King Sports venues are showing every televised Fulham fixture over the course of the season. We have had another one announced over the last few days in Man United at home in November. So instead of tuning into the internet for a dodgy stream, like I and others have definitely done in the past, get your mates together, get down to your local Green King pub and get close to the action if you can't make it in person.
Yeah, and the Green King Sport have just recently launched the Green King Sport Instagram page, which will be home to fan content, deals, and competitions throughout the season. Drop them a follow, and you won't just be the first to know about all of this, and you'll be helping out Fulhamish as well. Yeah, some big games this weekend: the North London Derby, Sheffield United against Newcastle, to name a few. But we're away at Palace at 3 p.m. Another 3 p.m. for Fulham. I'm not complaining. I think it's nice to have that sort of slot until we play Chelsea on the Monday Night Football. Is that the next game? I think it is the next game.
Next league game, yeah, because we've got the cup in between. Yeah.
Oh yes, we play Norwich next week. So the Jack and Joe show might shuffle around next week depending on the cup. But Joe, let's get into it. Palace, of course, lost at the weekend. They were without Roy Hodgson, of course. They were without Mark Gahey. They were 1-0 up, and Villa came back and won in quite decent fashion. I think Villa are one of the best teams in the league at the moment, form-wise. So in terms of Palace, I wasn't too surprised they lost the game, although they'll be disappointed in the way they did lose it, because the penalty that was given to Villa in the final closing moments didn't, for me, seem like it was a penalty, but VAR gave it. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
It's such an awkward one, that, because the referee's initial decision was penalty, and then they sent him to the monitor. So I guess he's just thinking, is it a clear and obvious error from me? And I always wonder of sort of like politics of that. Do they want to admit that they've made like an in-game error? I don't know. It's a tricky one. But yeah, as you say, Jack, us and Palace are coming into the game off the back of very different results. But ironically, we were both having the exact same scoreline up until the 89th minute. And then Palace, obviously, they conceded a fantastic equaliser, you have to say, from Villa. Penalty goes against them, which I think was very harsh. And then obviously the breakaway goal was already game over, but not ideal for them. It's a game that we won 3-0 last year in very strange circumstances, but it was the first game back after the World Cup. And I remember just before the World Cup, we'd had those two really last gasp winning goals against us for both Manchester clubs. And there was a bit of nerves about, we sort of almost had a little bottling mentality briefly before the World Cup. And it was, can we get back on track? And we did in some style, with Palace going down to 9 men and us scoring 3 goals. And it could have been a lot more, to be completely honest with you. What we do for a similar performance to that, I think that if you compare the way we're playing to that performance last year, is night and day. Attacking wise, we don't have the same fluidity. I don't think we have the same confidence. But Palace are definitely a team that you can get at. And we've seen that in their last 2 games. Palace Wolves, obviously, Jack, when you were there, and Palace with a better team on the day, Wolves still managed to get themselves 2 goals. And this is a Wolves team that's not very highly scoring. And then Villa, to be honest, it seemed like the draw was the least they deserved. They had been peppering the Palace goal all game, and they finally broke through in the 89th minute, and the floodgates opened as a result, as we've already said. From a Fulham perspective, obviously we beat Luton 1-0, and we were both saying last week, 3 points, not too bothered about the performance. Great, got that done. Now that it's all said and done, and I'm thinking ahead of another game, I'm concerned if we were to replicate that performance, because truthfully, I think that a better team at least gets a point against us, potentially all 3, with the chances that we let Luton have. And Palace are one of those teams where I think if it was Edouard with that header, or it was, rather than Tom Lockyer coming up from the back in the last minute, it was potentially Mark Guehi, maybe we're not walking away with a clean sheet. And I think Marco Silva will know that. It's going to be a very different game in terms of the way Luton set up. Credit to them, they were hard to break down. Palace aren't going to give us as much respect. I know that Palace are quite reserved in the type of football they play, especially under Roy Hodgson. We all know firsthand how he plays his football. It is very much solid defence first, go from there. But I don't think they'll be as deep as Luton were. And for that, I hope we can create a few more chances, because that's ultimately what worried me, Jack. I'd love to get your thoughts on the Luton game. The lack of chances created against a team that has been leaking so many goals, despite being very competitive in most of the games they've played. That did concern me, and it brought back shades of, dare I say it, Parker ball, in terms of all the ball, but not really the final key pass to get us into a scoring position.
I think that is a good point. And I think it wasn't the fact that we were having the ball and doing nothing with it, really. It was the lack of creativity that was coming from our creative players that was a concern. Willian's putting in performances that if I saw that when he first joined the club, I wouldn't be surprised, because that was the attitude I came in when he joined the club. But obviously he had a remarkable season last season. We wanted him to stay, but we're slowly starting to see a deterioration of performance from Willian, which doesn't really surprise me. I mean, he's like 35 years old. It's not like we're expecting him to sort of just cut in and score every time he gets the ball. But it does bode the question, do we make changes in those areas? I thought Pereira was incredibly quiet.
Yeah.
I thought the only threat we really had was when Harry Wilson was getting the ball, and he wasn't getting the ball enough for me. Jimenez was struggling to hold it up. Vinicius came on, got the goal. It felt like a championship game where we had a lot of the ball and we were playing against a very stubborn defence who just weren't letting us through. It felt like that Derby game under Silva we drew 0-0 in, where we just could not break them down. We were without Mitrovic in that game. I seem to remember, so Muniz was playing up front. And yeah, there is concern that there's a lack of creativity in this team. Pereira, for me, really has to step it up now, because without Mitrovic's hold-up play, with Jimenez not being able to replicate that sort of performance that we expected from Mitrovic, I'm concerned. And against a team in Luton who, you know, they've been poor, but they had their threats at the weekend. We're not going to be playing that sort of game every week. In fact, we probably will not be playing that game ever again this season, where there's just a line of a bank of, what was it, a 5 and a 4 in midfield.
Yeah.
And they just weren't letting us pass. I think the Palace will be much more open, especially at home. They'll want to bring the game onto us. Therefore, there's chances on the break. Therefore, when I think about a team we want to play and we'll get onto a team, there will be some changes I will make to that 11 for sure. Look, we did well to get the goal, to get the win. I'm pleased, obviously, but it wasn't a good performance. It wasn't one that filled me with a lot of confidence. And it was just about, can we get one goal and cling on? Not really cling on, but just sort of see the game out. And we did it. So I wasn't coming out the crowd fist pumping, going, "Wow, that's huge." It was just like, that's a relief. Really, we've got that result. And then going on to the Palace game, I think they're still going to be without Mark Guehi. I'm not sure. Obviously, there's no Elise. We know that for a fact. But Palace have their threats. I've seen them already this season. They were okay. They weren't brilliant against Wolves. In fact, Roy Hodgson was quite damning of their first half performance, where they didn't do much at all. But they have some very good players. Eze, Edouard, Doucouré. I'm very nervous for those sorts of players. And this is not anything like the game we had last season.
No.
The circumstances are completely different. I think morale is completely different. But it'd be amazing if we were to go away and win this and go up to 10 points, because it would be sort of like we'd probably be the most underperforming team in the Premier League that holds a high position in the table. And I'm not like annoyed to say that. It's just true. I think Forest look better than we do at this current stage.
Yeah.
I thought last night they did well. They probably should have lost the game, but there was enough in that performance that gave me confidence for them to do well this season. Let's get on to a team.
Yeah.
For Palace, I'm going to ask you first because I'm intrigued as to what you think how you think we should line up at Selhurst Park, and we'll see if whether Roy Hodgson's back or not. If not, it'll be Paddy McCarthy, I think, or no, I think I butchered that. Ray Lewington, definitely. But what's your 11 for the game?
It's a tricky one because, like you said, I think there definitely has to be changes off the back of that Luton performance, and two of the subs really changed the game for us in Vinicius, the goal scorer, but Iwobi, I thought, even though not everything was coming off, he was a live wire, he was everywhere, he was confident, and he was trying things ultimately that were positive. So I'll start from the defence. I'd go Leno in goal, obviously. And then the back four, I was impressed with Castagne filling in at left back. I was very happy with him. But I'd go with our normal back four of Robinson back at left back if he is fit. If not, more than happy for Castagne to continue for another game. He did a good job. Ream and Diop, no reason off the back of the Luton game to chain drive them for Bassi. Thought they were both good. And Tete, obviously, right back. Midfield three, interesting, this one. I think this is where more of the changes may come about. So Palhinha, fantastic performance, my man of the match.
Easy.
Why did we ever doubt his potential commitment
he was
in
brilliant,
game?
Wasn't he? Yeah.
He was great. The two alongside him, I think, is very tricky. I think I'd go with Harrison Reed. And then I'm not sure if I would put in Iwobi instead of Pereira in the 10. The reason that I'm going to say for now, no, I'm going to say Pereira just, is because I'm going to put Iwobi somewhere else in the team. I'm going to put him on the left wing because I think that Willian had a quieter game. Obviously, his cross ended up leading to the goal, but I'm interested to see Iwobi on the left, like we saw Jack opening day at Goodison Park. I'm just interested to see it.
Yeah.
Vinicius up top. I think that after he scored the goal, you've got to start him, and he looked dangerous as well. And then on the right-hand side, I was going to say Harry Wilson. Would not be opposed to Bobby Reed either.
Or Adama Traore.
Or Adama Traore if he's back from injury. The reason that I'm not 100% set on Wilson is, like you said, yes, he was looking reasonably dangerous, but he was not getting into positions where he was getting the ball enough for me, and he was not involved enough at the weekend, which is obviously partly to do with his teammates finding him, but also for him get involved in the game. So I think for me, the two real questions are, who will it be out of the attacking midfielders, and who will it be on the wings / up front?
You'd like to think that Robinson will be back. I'm not sure. It's obviously a threat, and I think that having someone like Robinson on the break away from home is important. We saw that against Everton. We saw that against Arsenal. We'd like to see it against Palace. Castagne, you're right, was good. I have no complaints about him. I think he'll be a very good utility player. And if he starts on Saturday because Robinson's not available, then fine. I have no issues with it. But I was thinking about Iwobi and going, do we play him in that midfield position where Harrison Reed sort of came off for him? Was that right on Saturday?
Yeah, that was right.
And then obviously have Pereira. But just for the fact we're away from home, we need a little bit more defensive midfield stability, and obviously Harrison Reed can sort of pluck into that position alongside Palhinha if we're under the cosh. And then we have an outball towards. I agree. I would put Iwobi on the left because I'm intrigued to see how he gets on in that position. Like you, I was actually going to go with Adama, but I think Harry Wilson probably would be the sensible option, and then bring Adama off the bench if push came to shove. Pereira in the 10. I'm kind of going in a weird order here, but and then Vinicius up top. So I do agree with your team.
Yeah,
basically, it'd be nice to see Sasha Lukic come back at some point. Tom Kearney's obviously still an option, and Luke Harris maybe if in and around. He's an option. Bobby Reed, and then obviously Jimenez and Muniz off the bench as well. It's just. Right now, in those attacking areas, I'm not seeing enough spark and I'm thinking of the likes of Pereira and the likes of Wilson. And obviously, we haven't even mentioned Willian. We say Willian's not going to start against Palace. He might start.
Yeah.
He might start over Iwobi, like we say, on the left-hand side. But I said this a couple of weeks ago. The team doesn't really get me going. There's not enough excitement in this team on paper, and then what I'm seeing on the pitch as well. And so then what I'm seeing on the pitch is reflecting back onto the paper and going, well, these players didn't really get going against Luton, therefore I'm not really excited. I am excited to see Fulham play again, whatever, but it doesn't really get me motivated to be like, or give me confidence to think that we're going to create much or score goals against this Palace team. I hope I'm wrong. And obviously, a big one on Pellegrini, who's brilliant, absolutely brilliant against Luton. It was as if like nothing had ever happened, really. What about a score prediction for the game against Crystal Palace?
A bit boring from me. I feel like you might have the same. I'm going to go 1-1.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm not going 0-0 is because I don't have confidence in us to keep a clean sheet if we give up chances the way we did on the weekend. And hopefully we don't. But ultimately, we have in pretty much every game we've played so far, given clear-cut chances to the opposition. It would be a great time for it to stop now. That being said, I back us to have a bit more going forward when the game's more open, like you suggested it would be. And I think that we'll get ourselves a goal and get a 1-1 draw, which would, by the way, Jack, if we were on 6 games and 8 points, be the exact total we had this time last season. It's up for debate which season had the hardest start, because last time we were away to Arsenal and Spurs. This time we were away to Arsenal and City. Last season we had the home game against Brighton. This time we've had the home game against Brentford, for example. So it's
and Liverpool we played.
And Liverpool last year, actually, yeah. Oh, that might turn it slightly in last year's favour, but 8 points after 6 games would be a fantastic return, especially considering, like we both said, that we haven't been at our best in any of the games.
And I sort of looked at the fixture list this season and sort of was thinking there's no real run of fixtures where we can actually sort of pick up a bit of momentum, apart from, I think there's one in February and maybe a little bit in October. But you look at Chelsea, and I don't see Chelsea right now as a threat at all. I don't see that as a game where it's like, well, our backs are going to be up against the wall there. You know, we saw, last season we can give them a game. We took 4 points from them. I think they haven't made any improvements to suggest that they're going to be any more threatening than they were last season. I think against Bournemouth, if it wasn't for some really poor finishing, they probably would have won the game. But they just don't look very good, and they have so many injuries. By the time we play them next Monday, we'll obviously preview it, that none of those injuries are really going to be back. I don't know whether Moises Caicedo might be in the squad, but certainly Lavia is definitely going to be out for a substantial amount of time. I don't want to skip ahead too much. In terms of the score prediction for Crystal Palace, 1-1 was always in my head. But you know what? Bobby Reid off the bench to win it for Fulham.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Because why not? Have a bit of confidence. I know that I haven't really come across as very confident in this video at all, but back the boys. Silence the Palace fans. Send us home happy. Send them home unhappy. Get one over my brother as well. That should be brilliant, because he's a Palace fan and he keeps sending me Fabrizio Romano's tweets about what Mitrovic said about Al Halal, and just get in the bin, both of you. Anyway, is there anything else to talk about? I suppose we've got the Norwich game next week, which will sort of be midweek. That's obviously, they're on fine form at the moment, despite losing to Rotherham. They beat Stoke at the weekend, and they're in and around. I think they'll be up there by the end of the season. This is a team who will probably come and sort of trying to unsettle Fulham. I think we've got more than enough to win that game. I'd be interested to see how we rotate, given we've got the Chelsea game on the Monday as well. So maybe it'll be a slightly stronger team than I would have first expected. And obviously, if we win, we're into the last 16 of the competition. Suddenly, we can start going. We're 2 rounds away from a 2-legged semi-final here, Joe.
God, I didn't realize it was that. It was that serious. I'm now nervous for the game, but I mean, yeah, Norwich will be We've got a very good record against Norwich. I don't want to take that for granted. But ultimately, even with our rotated squad, the bench at the weekend looked the strongest it's been in years, in my opinion. And it would be great to use some of that depth. But as you say, it's a Wednesday night. We've got the next game on the following Monday. We don't have to go full second string 11 that being said, I think our second string 11 is good enough, as long as they perform to the best of their ability, which they should do, because they'll be fighting for their place. So I'm looking forward to that game. I'm looking forward to seeing some players that maybe we haven't seen yet. For example, Fode Ballo-Touré will most likely start at left back, you'd imagine. Castagna could be as the right back in his more natural position. I would say about Stephen Bender in goal, but I don't think he's back fit yet. So it'll probably be Rodak, which I'm more than happy to see.
Yeah.
And yeah, just, you know what? I hope it's one of those games where a few players, and this is with no disrespect to Norwich, it's more just they are weaker than the other opposition we're going to be playing against over the next few weeks and months. I would hope that a few players that maybe have been a little bit short of confidence could maybe grab themselves a goal. For example, Jimenez. It's a great opportunity to maybe play with slightly more freedom than in the Premier League games. And you know what? I think the ticket prices for this one are very reasonable. I've got mine myself. I'm looking forward to it. I hope that we can sell out as much of the cottage as possible and get behind the team, despite it being quite an early round of the competition. And I'm looking forward to it, Jack.
Good. Yes, I think, I'd like to see Tom Cairney definitely get a run out in that game, get his sharpness up a little bit. Bobby Reid probably will play, which would be good. Maybe even Luke Harris, which would be great. But again, let's not take it for granted.
Or Lukic, etc. Yeah,
exactly. Calvin Bassey, who, by the way, if I saw him on the starting lineup sheet on Saturday, I'd actually be quite pleased with that.
Yeah.
Ahead of Ream. Nothing against Ream. I just think that I'd like to see Bassey get some more minutes. And from what we've seen from him so far this season, he showed a little bit of promise. I know that red card against Arsenal, he actually took one for the team there and we ended up getting a point. I'm not too fussed about that. But the game against Hoffenheim is living rent free in my head in terms of that performance he put in on his debut, scoring a goal as well. I'd love to give Bassey a little run out, whether it be this weekend, maybe whether it be against Norwich. Last question. How are you feeling? Because we're on 7 points. It doesn't necessarily look terrible, but the performances, apart from the Arsenal game, I haven't been very encouraged by the way we've been playing so far this season. Maybe it's going to be one of those seasons where we don't play very well and just grind out results, and we finish 14th, but we get the job done really. I think basically maybe more credit should be given to Marco Silva for maybe actually getting more out of a more limited squad, lesser quality squad. But obviously, we'll judge that in May. But in terms of so far, I don't feel like Fulham fans are very satisfied with what they've seen. But the points tallies speak. It's almost like the opposite of Parker.
Yeah,
where the performances were great, but we didn't have the points. And now it's like the performances aren't great, but we do have the points, so we can't really complain.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very happy with the points tally. Obviously, goal difference not great, but it's just those two games against Brentford when got the red card with half an hour left, and then the Man City game. They could just do that to you out of nowhere. So I'm feeling good about where we are. But I agree that performances are concerning me a little bit. This is the run now where I want to see those improve. We've got Palace, Norwich in the Cup, Chelsea, and Sheffield United before the next international break. And that's a big opportunity to pick up points, but also to play better, essentially. I agree with you. The Arsenal game in the league's the only performance I've been very happy with. I would add in Spurs in the Cup, but obviously that was against a rotated Spurs team. But I thought that was actually probably the best we've played this season in any game. Different style needed when you go away to a top six club than when you're at home in the Cup. But obviously it was a much more front foot performance than against Arsenal, although both were great. I think that I will only be concerned if the results catch up to these performances over the next few weeks in these big games. I'm less concerned about when we go to Tottenham or when we go away to Brighton. I'm more concerned about this one on Saturday against Palace, and then at home to Sheffield United, and even at home to Chelsea. We should be getting results against these teams if we want to finish roughly where we do in the league, which is, as high as possible, top half, mid-table, somewhere comfortable. We shouldn't be giving up as many clear-cut chances as we have been. And for me, that's the main priority. I can deal with being a little bit more dull to watch on the board and not creating too much as long as we are limiting teams at the other end. But if it's we're not doing anything going forward ourselves, but we're quite open at the back, it's only going to turn one way. And that is ultimately losing games when the form catches up to us. So I hope we can turn it around. I also do want to flag that, Luton did not dominate the game or anything like that. I'm just concerned by a few of the clear-cut chances they had. And obviously we had some as well, and we scored from one of ours. And ultimately, quality is what keeps you in this league. And Carlos Vinicius is better than the Luton strikers, or at least was on the day. I do think he is in general, but it's just about who can perform on the day. So I'm optimistic, but we need to see improvements from what we've seen so far, in my opinion.
Our USP last season was getting the 3 points against teams who are around us in the table, the bottom half, and that basically projected us up to a high finish of 10th.
Yeah.
And so far, we have a win against Everton and we have a win against Luton, albeit 1-0 wins where we were unconvincing, to say the least. But 3 points is 3 points.
Yeah.
The loss to Brentford, we lost them away from home. We beat them, at home last season. So if we went away and beat Brentford on I think the penultimate game of the season, then that balances it out. But yeah, maybe we got a little bit lucky. Was it a foul on Carlton Morris by Harrison Reed?
Not sure about that. Yeah,
not really. Luton are trying to hang their hatters hats on that. Yeah, not a good one. Time to call it a day. Joe Sanson, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks everyone for watching, and enjoy your trip to Palace if you are going.
We're in one of those situations where we're not really sure when we're going to be recording next because we've got the midweek game against Norwich. Perhaps we do one on the Thursday after the 2 games. Perhaps we do one on the Monday, Tuesday after the Palace game. Perhaps we don't do one at all because we've lost both 5-0 and we don't want to speak about Fulham. I'm guessing that won't happen. Thanks so much for watching, and yeah, come on Fulham.